With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
And this half hour brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummels Wharf. Online, sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, best in new inventory, great pre-owned inventory with the Sunbury Motors guarantee. Terrific service department. Whether it happens to be quick lane, inspections, routine, difficult, they handle it all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummels Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. The outstanding, incomparable, the best, Neal Coolong joins us. Sir, welcome back.
As always, it's great to be here. It's good to be back. A little bit of a break there, but we're ready to go, right?
Absolutely. So training camp gets underway. The Watt signing was significant for the entire league because it maybe by a little bit incrementally reset the bar for defensive ends, and you don't think the Micah Parsons people are not looking at that. Your thoughts on the signing of Watt, because there have been some debate in Pittsburgh about whether he should be re-signed.
I always looked at it as more this is inevitable. The Steelers, contrary to civic belief, are not as cheap a franchise as people want to make them out to be.
That's right.
What they are is selective. And usually what happens this time of the year is people get caught up with whatever the Pirates are doing, or more to the point, not doing. And the same talking point kind of seems to get translated over to the Steelers. The Steelers spend about 10%, roughly, give or take, call it 6, 7, 8 million, somewhere in there, to the salary cap every year. It's not a question of whether they're going to spend money. Their thing is more, they're going to pay top of market for certain people. They are loyal, some might say to a fault in some cases, and the consternation that you hear in regards to Watt, I think, is around that. He's coming off a year that's less Wattian than we've become accustomed to, which really says something, because in a vacuum, it's pretty good. You know, you're not overly crying about it. The number is always what freaks people out. They'll say, well, is he worth $40 million? We can get into the math. If you really want to look at the market, he's absolutely worth that. There's no debate. In fact, I don't think it was ever even really a question. I think what the Steelers like to do is allow that market to be set. So the fact that Garrett's signing came when it did, which was a little bit unusual, it's probably not around the time that you'd see the mega bucks extension given to a team, that sets basically what Watt is going to negotiate. And the exact same thing is why Parsons hasn't signed yet. He's going to wait for Watt because Watt already has been paid, just to kind of make sure Parsons is last, because he's the one that hasn't been paid yet. He's going to be the highest paid. It's not about that. It's about more, you want to escalate from whoever just signed last if you're top of the market. That's how it works. Watt was always going to get what he was going to get. In fact, we could have predicted it within 2-3% probably. Not much of a negotiation beyond maybe guarantee into the third year, maybe a fourth year, how they're going to structure it in years 1, 2, and 3, particular this season, considering what the Steelers are already on the hook for. do they want to improve their salary cap situation right now? Like, do they need the money right now, or are they going to say, well, we can push a bonus into next year more. We'll keep him at the number we were at. All of these things they're tedious, accounting types of things. I don't think it was a question ever of, do we want T.J. Watt? That answer is emphatically yes. They weren't going to let him go. They weren't going to make him play this coming year in kind of a lame duck season, considering the transformation I think that they're already in process of making. Watt is going to be a part of that. He was always going to be a part of that. And I don't think that there's really much to suggest that they ever thought twice about it. It was always just a question of how much and when the deal would come down. And right before camp makes sense. They wanted to participate in camp. He probably wasn't going to otherwise. Whether you call that a holdout, hold in, whatever, I don't care. If he's not participating in the drills with everybody else, he's not participating in camp. They wanted to make sure he was going to do that. They got the deal lined up, pretty far ahead of advance of camp, and now they'll be set with their roster, preparing for what should be a real interesting season in Pittsburgh.
Is there any particular position or positions that you're looking at with this team that interest you because it may determine the success of this team?
For me, it really is two things. It could be all of them. Let's be honest. You really have to evaluate every position on this team. But the ones that are probably going to stand out the most, because I think they have the most weight on their shoulders, first would be the offensive line. You've got probably a different combination of players, but highly talented, highly regarded, and experienced now. Mason McCormick was not supposed to play last year. The storyline was supposed to be him taking over at right guard this year. He played a bunch last season. He got better as the season went on. Not the greatest rookie year, but pretty good considering where he came from. I would expect him to make a real nice leap this season alongside Zach Frazier. I think is going to be a Pro Bowl level player. We saw a lot of that last season. The big discussion, though, is Troy Fautanu versus Broderick Jones. We're finally getting into that. It's a long time ago these guys were drafted now, it feels like. Now it seems like the plan that they had for the future of their offensive tackles is going to be on the field. We're going to see Broderick Jones at left tackle. We're going to see Fautanu hopefully stay healthy and play. I thought he did very well in very limited action last season, certainly for a rookie. We'll see how he can get through camp this season, take more reps and get better as a player, and how he can contribute. But this is, on paper, the best offensive line I think the Steelers have had on paper in a decade. So that's going to be critical to their success overall. They're going to need to be able to run. They're going to need to be able to provide protection, at least for a shorter passing game, which is what I would imagine they'll do with Aaron Rodgers. But that really swings us over then to the wide receivers. Now you've got DK Metcalf, the big trade, the big signing this offseason, obviously going to be somebody that takes on a pretty good share of targets, something that you would think George Pickens would be responsible for this season. He's out as well. You have not seen really anything of Roman Wilson, though people talk him up as if he's a 5-year veteran. I don't know who he is as a player. We'll find that out. We know that because that title has been transferred from Calvin Austin to Roman Wilson. We don't know who Calvin Austin really is. He's gotten more reps. Seems to be kind of just a maybe 3-target a game kind of guy. Can he be an impact player in a bigger role? Jonnu Smith, though, if we want to discuss receivers as opposed to just the position of wide receiver, I think a lot of 21 personnel is coming, 2 tight end sets. Pat Freiermuth is going to be a high target guy. You expect triple digits for him in that area, and Jonnu Smith is going to have to be very effective in short yardage and red zone situations if this team is going to be successful. But again, to me, it's going to come down to the offensive line's ability to carve out a run game and protect the quarterback. If they can't do that, like any team, I guess, they're probably not going to win very many games.
Yeah, that's interesting. What about the battle? How interested are you to see when they get to the preseason? Because the fans will be interested in this. Will Howard's performance in games in the preseason.
Oh, boy. Back at I refer to it as the old site. When I was running Behind the Steel Curtain on the SB Nation network, we came up with a tongue-in-cheek joke award that we would give out after each training camp period. We called it the Isaac Redman Award because it became sort of a running joke on the site. Isaac Redman was this undrafted free agent from nowhere, and he was taking on these Herculean-like traits from the fans after each positive practice report that he got. He's better than Bo Jackson in Tecmo Bowl, things like that. It was funny. It was humorous. So the award became something to the effect of the player who demonstrated the most Redmanian-like qualities during the preseason after having been drafted the 6th round or later within the last 2 years. And again, the idea was this was tongue-in-cheek. It was a joke. People really took it seriously. They were arguing over it constantly. Probably had 12 different nominees for this. It's like this is supposed to be really selective, Like we should know exactly who it is going into it. There really shouldn't be much of a debate. Will Howard is going to win that award hands down. I believe the site still does it. I don't think there's even going to be a question. That's how big it seems Steelers fans are on Will Howard. The level of performance in the preseason, probably with the threes and the taxi squad guys getting out there, it's not going to be all that different than what Landry Jones expertly navigated back in the day. Josh Dobbs did really well in that role. Usually the third-string quarterback, with some proficiency, can look pretty good. You get a throw or two, but by and large, they're just trying to test other guys out. They want to run the ball, try a few things with offensive linemen in different situations. You're not really setting the quarterback up to succeed per se, but if they do their job well, their numbers will reflect that. It'll probably be something like, in 13 of 18 for, 121 yards and a touchdown and no interceptions. I think Will Howard has a lot of those kinds of games in him, to be honest with you. Come Sunday, I'm not sure if that's really the type of thing he's able to do, but I definitely think we'll see some proficiency from him because I don't think it's going to be overly complicated. And to be honest, from my perspective, I know this is not a popular opinion in the Steeler Nation, that's all really Will Howard has been asked to do in his career. He knows how to do that. One-look read, get rid of the ball, throw it on time, make smart decisions, make the right decision with the ball, play with competition, play with fire. He can do that. He is just not, as far as NFL quarterbacks go, he is not exceptional in terms of his traits. He doesn't have a great arm. He hasn't been asked to view the entire field, to throw that type of an offense in a passing game anyway. So I would imagine it's because they evaluate him and they don't think that he really can. So with that, he can do the things that they're asking him to do, but they haven't asked him to do a whole lot, in my opinion, coming into this. It won't be much different in the preseason either. And I think with that, he'll do pretty well. I think he'll be on the team in some fashion. I wouldn't think they'll cut him. I think they'll keep 3 quarterbacks and try to develop him to see if he can be their future backup. But that's really what his ceiling is. He's not going to be better than that overall. But we will certainly hear all about it come August.
Oh, we'll hear a lot about him. And you're right. There are certain guys that, if people were to walk in on a certain day of practice, would sit back and go, whoa, 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 whoa. And you're like, no. It's not going to work.
Honestly, if you know what you're looking at, I'm not trying to rag on Will Howard, but if you know what you're looking at from a quarterback perspective, you're looking at the same thing the Steelers looked at when they drafted him. This is a guy, he's smart, he has a lot of experience, good character. He can play a role on this team. If we can develop him to the point that if we need him to finish a game, maybe start a second game, we're kind of all right with that. It's not ideal, but that's probably his highest and best use. And a large part of that is you have to really just look at what they asked him to do in college. And I'm not even exaggerating when I say this. As far as the college game goes, last year he was thrown to the equivalent of Randy Moss, Terrell Owens, and Jerry Rice.
No kidding. Oh, no kidding.
College players couldn't stop those guys. We know that. We saw them win a national championship. He didn't have to do a whole lot. They weren't asking him to really lead the offense. They had so much firepower at their skill positions. What he needed to do was just put the ball where it needed to go. And there's something to be said for that, but that's the trait of a backup quarterback. The intelligence part of it, knowing how to play within schedule, that's important for that role. And I personally am somebody that feels a backup quarterback is a top 20 roster position. You want to develop it. That's what they have in mind with a 6th-round pick. Nobody is evaluating him as a future starting quarterback by choice. He's not going to beat out anybody. And if he's your guy going into a season, I don't know how serious the team really is. And again, I'm not trying to bash him, but a good backup prospect to develop. That's really who Will Howard is.
Yeah, no. Yeah, because last year when Penn State played Ohio State, Penn State actually shut down Jeremiah Smith. They shut him down. But Emeka Egbuka had a pretty good day. So, yeah, you're right. That's always interesting. Defensively, the linebackers, how do you look at the linebackers? Because we concentrate so much on the pressure up front, and we concentrate a lot on the secondary with Slay now being there with the addition of Ramsey and Joey Porter Jr. What about the linebackers?
You invested a good amount of money, the Steelers, in Patrick Queen.
Yep.
And I think you got, what would you say, 2/3 of those expectations last year? It felt like there was a gear that was missing with him. And to some degree, I'm willing to concede it's possible that he just wasn't comfortable. He wasn't into it yet. But, you know me, I'm not going to read a whole lot into body language. But it seemed to me like he wasn't the same player that we saw in Baltimore where he was running free a little bit more. Now, let's be honest. When you have Roquan Smith next to you, you can play a bit more aggressively on your end and feel comfortable that somebody's got your back. Maybe that's not the case for the Steelers. I think Peyton Wilson is probably going to be their guy a good chunk of snaps this season, along with Queen, just for his ability in pass coverage. And with that, I think you can see Queen maybe open up a little bit more. Another off season with the team, kind of time to get used to what Mike Tomlin's asking him to do on defense. I hope to see more from him. I'll put it that way. He's more of a playmaker than what we saw last year, which was really not at all. I mean, he really wasn't around the ball that much. I think he had one pick, and it was so long awaited that people were freaking out for it when it actually happened. It was, I believe it was a bit into the season. So the expectations are there for him, sure. I mean, it's not hard to get out of this contract after this season, so you don't want to pay a guy $9, $10, $11 million moving forward if he's not making plays on defense. So I think he's a critical component to keeping all sides together, which is exactly why they paid him what they paid him. So I am hoping to see a bit more from him this season, and I think that is possible. We've seen the physical ability. I've always said he's a good, not a fantastic player. There's a reason the Ravens paid Roquan Smith after acquiring him and not Patrick Queen, the guy they drafted. So you're not getting top of position play from him. But I think he can make a few more plays on the ball than he did last season.
Yeah, no question about that. And now here comes one really off the wall. We all know Boswell's the place kicker. Can they be a better team when they punt and or return the ball?
I remember you and I talking last year about all the changes we expected on special teams and in the kick game in particular. From a return standpoint, it really didn't seem like a whole lot changed. We didn't see much. We didn't see much of a difference in that area. I will say this: without crunching the numbers, it seems to me the Steelers have signed a fairly high amount of guys to that kind of typical special teams sort of contract. Miles Killebrew is playing into the final year of his contract, so the fattest dollars that he has in his contract, and he is purely a special teams guy. Now, the fact that they traded Minkah Fitzpatrick and haven't, as of now, added another safety, maybe they feel comfortable with Killebrew on the roster. But I felt, honestly, with the other signings that they made, they signed that other linebacker in Baltimore. Off the top of my head, I'm forgetting who else. But that kind of 2-year, $7 million, $8 million type of deal typically is like top of market special teams player money. Not return man, but special teams player. Miles Killebrew was a key component in a win in each of the last seasons. That says a lot for a special teams player who's not returning the ball. He blocks punts. That's obviously a big thing. If you want to score an upset, making a play on special teams definitely helps you. If they want to move on from him because contract related might not be worth their time anymore, they've got guys lining up to replace him. It seems like the Steelers want to put emphasis in that area within their roster to make sure that their depth players are good special teams players. Now that makes logical sense. You hope that yields better results. I don't think they were a bad special teams unit last year.
No.
But certainly it can be a critical component, probably punting more than anything else. And it would be nice if this is the year that they'll have the free agent investment that they made in their punter last season. They'll have him back this season. Johnston, the Bill Barr clone, they'll be able to get him on the field, which they didn't get last year. He tore his ACL, I believe, like right away in camp last season, something like that. Hopefully all of that brings out a better unit overall. I don't think it was a bad unit. They made splash plays. They'll miss that. The threat of that with the absence of Minkah Fitzpatrick. I think that's something that doesn't get talked about enough. He was a very good special teams player and filled a big role for them. But overall, it seems like they have made the financial investment to shore up those spots and to get veteran-like play out of those units. I think they'll be able to do that.
My friend, always a pleasure. Appreciate it as always. And we're back to kicking into high gear.
Absolutely. It's great to be here as always. Thanks for having me, guys.
Half hour brought to you by Sunbury Motors on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Half hour brought to you by Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Imports, domestics, microbrews, the best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drinks, schnacks. That's how the Sioux would pronounce it, schnacks. Roast their peanuts fresh and out every day. 6 great flavors of slushies. And ready-to-drink cocktails. Jack Daniels, High Noon, Crown, Royal. Yeah, all at our good friends. And the pickle bar, by the way, led by the Barrels and the Dills, and second to none, all at Brewers Outlet. Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. All right. Now, the all Big Ten preseason team. I don't know how great it is when I'm one of the guys that votes for it, but it's okay. 3 Penn State players are on there. We had to pick 12 players. That's how it worked. And Drew Aller, Denai Dennis Sutton, and Nicholas Singleton are there. 3 from Ohio State, Caleb Downs, Jeremiah Smith, and Sonny Styles. 2 from Oregon, Mateo Uyunglele, the outstanding. They have him listed as outside linebacker. I kind of think of him more as a stand-up defensive end. And Dylan Tiedemann, whom I think is outstanding. He transferred from Purdue to Oregon. Tiedemann's a big-time player. Coy Parrish of Minnesota. 2 from Iowa. Jennings Dunker, the left tackle, and Logan Jones, the center. 2 from Indiana. Mikhail Kamara, the defensive lineman, and a guy I think is a terrific player, D'Angelo Pons, the defensive back. And 2 from Illinois, Luke Altmaier, the quarterback, and Gabe Akis, the outside linebacker defensive end. They were all preseason Big Ten. Now for the Tony Petitti part. Let's get to that. And Tony has been asked a lot about the college football playoff. So these are tweets from a combination of Adam Rittenberg and Brett McMurphy. Brett tweeted, Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti said Big Ten had teams in 4 of the most viewed games last season, 7 of the top 10, 10 of the top, had teams in 4 of the most viewed games last year, had 7 of the top 10, and 12 of the top 20 most viewed games of the year. With that in mind, of course, he's asked about the playoff. He was asked why he wants 4-4-2-2-1. He says, we want to better connect the regular season and the postseason. We want more conference games to matter in November. And also mentions non-league scheduling. Now, the part about November I'll get to now. This has always been my argument I've had with people about who said that college football's regular season was the most relevant. And my argument before the playoff had always been, except when you get to November, when there should be the biggest games, they're the most ignored games. Because ESPN, with the 4-team playoff, was concentrating on so much up between 4 and 7 teams, they didn't talk about anybody else. And I felt the November 2024 had more juice to it and more interest to it because more teams had a chance to make it. I don't know how you felt about that, Todd, but that's how I looked at it.
I do. I mean, I don't know how this makes it more interesting than November was last year.
Yeah.
I just don't. But I do think, like we talked in the first segment, I can see his point in this, and I do think people will like the games.
Yeah.
I just think it just sounds, I think people, it just sounds like the SEC and the Big Ten are controlling everything.
And you're absolutely right about that. You are not incorrect about that.
And I think people, I really think, we talk about people aren't used to the new era of college sports. And I think people are still looking at this like it's the old Big Ten, the old SEC. That there is 12 teams. I don't think people are used to the size and the scope and the reason that they do have all this power.
Right.
And I think once we get used to this system and realize where everybody is at right now and realize that these schools, I think the only schools that end up being left out are the smaller conferences. I'm not even talking Mountain West. I'm talking even smaller. And I'm not sure how many schools that they end up with in another system anyway. So I'm one of those people that have been like kind of anti this in my head because it just sounds strange. Sure. But the more I think about it, I mean, it makes the most sense. I'm not a big fan of I don't like the fact that it might limit, what that Ohio State-Texas game means, in September. But I think if we have to give a little bit of that up, I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah. Okay. So, I agree about. I think if this were to work out, so let's go. I'll start with your Ohio State-Texas part first. That game would still be played. In fact, everybody in the Big Ten would be playing a game like that. Because I believe what they have talked about is the possibility of the Big Ten and the SEC having a game against each other. And one of the reasons they can do that is they feel that with the 4 automatic qualifiers, you're not as damaged by losing the game. So let's play us let's have 16 games in a particular weekend, or excuse me, 8 games in a particular weekend, whatever it may be, or even 16 games in a particular weekend where you've got SEC Big Ten.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean anything.
It means something for interest, and it means something for ratings, because that's why the Big Ten and the SEC, Todd, have so much power. They have so much power because of what he said at the beginning. The Big Ten, that is just from the Big Ten point of view, because you know the SEC's involved in this too, had teams in 4 of the most viewed games last season. They had teams in games last season that were 7 of the top 10. And 12 of the top 20 games involved a Big Ten team. Now, the SEC's also involved in that. Okay?
But they all counted for something. If we go with this model and they do SEC for Big Ten, what does it matter if Ohio State beats Texas? It doesn't matter. They're going to, I know you're going to say strength of schedule and stuff, but they are going to make it a point to make sure that these don't matter because of this system.
It would matter in seeding, and it would matter as to who your postseason matchup would be. If you're sitting there and now it's a choice between, let's just say, 4th seeded Ohio State. Okay, Ohio State and Texas is who's going to be the 4th seed, who's going to be the 5 seed. And let's say it's a 16-team playoff. Okay? So 4 is going to play 13, 5 is going to play 12. Well, for all we know, 13 is Arizona State, and 12 happens to be Alabama.
Yeah, but you may not be saying it outright, out loud, but you're telling these coaches to play these games that they're not going to hurt you in conference, and they're not going to hurt you in the playoff. If it hurts your seeding, it hurts you in the playoff.
Well, losing the game could also hurt your psyche too, and you don't want one loss to become 2. You're still trying to stay out of the 3-loss pool, I think, when it's all said and done. Now, you could have 3 losses in the Big Ten, and under the 3-6-4-5 format, okay. He says, we want to better connect the regular season and the postseason. We want more conference games to matter in November. We want to keep as many teams alive as deep in the season as possible. Okay, that's fine. Okay? On automatic qualifying bids, we feel very strongly providing games that are do or die at the end of the season will increase fan interest. Talking to those involved in our league, championship games and playing games are not bad for college football. Adam Rittenberg then tweets, Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti said the Big Ten and SEC are obviously not in the same place on these discussions, but is confident they can come together and have productive discussions as they have twice in the past calendar year. Now to your point about 6-3 in the Big Ten, and this is to your point. He said if you're 6-3 in the Big Ten, I would argue that's a good record. If you stumble in the non-conference, I don't know why that would disqualify you from playoff contention. So that goes to your point. Even he subtly agrees with it.
I guess my argument here is they are making it that like people's interest in this last year was strictly on, who wins the conference. And what they're drawing their November interest in is who is getting into the playoffs. I think we're kind of misreading the situation.
Yeah.
I mean, does anybody know who won the Big Ten? Does the casual fan know who won the SEC last year?
I do.
Well, I mean,
I was a witness.
Yeah, I get that, but I just mean it's one of those things where I think,
I think fans of each conference know who won.
Who won? Yes, but
I mean, I think every fan who is a fan of of their conference knows who won their conference. You may have a difficult time maybe knowing who won. Well, I think the playoff kind of set the tone as to who won. Oregon was the 1 seed because they won. Georgia was the 2 seed because they won. Boise State was the 3 seed because they won the Mountain West. And Arizona State was the 4 seed because they won the Big 12.
Well, we're sports nerds, though.
Right. But people who know, who are interested in the playoff, know why the teams were playing who they were playing because of the seeds.
I just do you think there's like you're going to draw a giant rating for Iowa and Purdue? Playing for that, not even playing to get in. Like, I think his theory is if we're a week before that 3 versus 6 game, that Iowa versus Purdue to get that 6th seed is going to draw monster ratings.
That's a good point because you and I both know it won't. It'll be of interest, but that doesn't mean. In other words, you'd like to know the result of the game to see who got the 6th seed. But I don't know if it compels you to watch. Now, Iowa Nebraska plays the last game of the season on that Friday, and that's usually a time where either I'm on the road doing basketball or I'm done with the show, and I sit down and I watch the game. Right?
Yeah.
Just normally. But what if that game is one's in 6th place, the other one's in 7th place, and the winner gets 6? Well, now that has, at least to me, you're right, I'm a sports nerd, a little more interest.
I mean, if there is that kind of stakes, we're going to watch. People like us we're going to watch it regardless.
Right.
And I'm wondering if you get those. I don't know if there's such thing as casual fans anymore, just because everything is so fractured these days. But I mean. The so-called casual fans going to be intrigued enough by a matchup like that to get some kind of rating?
No, but the next week they probably will be.
Yes.
Okay. So, and I do believe there are casual fans that really they like sports, but the bigger the game, the more inclined they are to watch. And I think that a Purdue, Indiana, Old Oak, and Bucket game doesn't draw a lot of interest anyway, even if there are stakes. They just don't have the name brand to pull it off. If you got Michigan and Ohio, say Michigan and Ohio State are further back in the standings and Indiana and Purdue are higher in the standings, Michigan and Ohio State still maybe get a exponentially bigger rating than Indiana Purdue.
And in that situation, Michigan Ohio State's still the big noon Saturday game that weekend.
Oh yeah, selected in the off season. No doubt.
I mean, let's get the games.
I know. Now, when he talks about November, though, it's not just the last weekend, though.
Yeah.
There are 5 games in November that Penn State's playing this year. All right, and those 5 games are at Ohio State, home with Indiana, at Michigan State, home with Nebraska, at Rutgers. Now, in the 12-team playoff format, as opposed to no automatic qualifiers, Penn State needs to win those games just like they won their 4 November games last year. They had stumbled in any one of the 4 games last year down the stretch. A, they're not in the Big Ten championship game, and B, now they're in a debate as to whether they should be in. I think they still would have made it, but they would have been in what I refer to as the opinion pool. Well, let's talk about their schedule. Let's talk about their quality wins. Let's talk about, because Penn State only had one loss going into the title game with Oregon, they weren't in that pool. So I think that's part of it. But you have, when you have the opportunity, I think to have the month of November with bigger games. From November 1 to November 29, I think that's what Tony's talking about.
But I mean, I think I think we've talked about this before. The playoff did that last year.
It did.
There was more interest in that mid-November Alabama game than there would have been normally.
No doubt.
But
no doubt.
It would.
In other words, you have an 18-team conference. Okay, you have an 18-team conference. So with my fellow broadcasters a year ago, and, we all get together. We do that golf outing every year. So you just sit around and shoot the bull, all right, which we're good at. And I brought up to everybody, I said, they're going to do this 1 through 18 thing. Is finishing 8th good? And I thought the best answer, I think it was Matt LePay of Wisconsin, gave the best answer. He says, it kind of depends on who you are. He says, if you're a Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, he says, finishing 8th is horrible. He says, but if you're a team trying to rise up like Northwestern, 8th may be pretty good. All right, well, now, if you go into the last 2 weeks of the season and you're 8th, you actually still have a chance to make the college football playoff because you're trying to fight to get to 6th. Now, whether that draws more interest in fans, I don't know. But you're not out of it in 8th place if you have this kind of format with 2 or 3, like let's just say with 3 weeks to play, depending on who you're playing. And I'm not defending it. I'm explaining it.
It is an interesting question, and I do think you're probably correct. I do wonder, again, the Penn States, the Ohio States, the Alabamans will always have that interest. I do wonder if it does bring, if these, for lack of a better way to put it, mid-level teams make it and perform well in these games, I think it really won't matter in the end. But I think right now, the way it's structured, I don't think people are too jazzed on. I think I used Iowa and Purdue. But if this works out, and I think people will come around to it if it does eventually come to this. I don't think it's as awful as it's being made to sound like right now. How's that? I think just like I said before, I don't think people realize that like the SEC and the Big Ten now encapsulates like what is it, 36 total teams? Is it 18 and 18 or 18 and
34? 34.
So 30
and 16.
Yeah, 34 total teams. I mean, that's really a preponderance of these these 4 Power 4 conferences.
Yeah. No doubt. So let's go back to last year's playoff. The rating for Notre Dame and Indiana was great on opening night, right? But
yes.
What if Indiana was playing SMU? It's not even in the same realm because Notre Dame, with all due respect to the nice people in Indiana, and they were a great story last year, Notre Dame carried the night. I mean, it's that's something that we always used to talk about, the importance of markets and ratings. Look at the markets the Big Ten has. New York, Philly, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Washington, Columbus, Detroit, Chicago, on and on and on, right? Minneapolis. Okay, now Los Angeles. But to me, it's now more about brands. College is about brand. Pros are more about market. And even the pros brand means something, because brands are what people get attached to.
Just going to say, the Cowboys aren't on TV all the time because they're always good.
Don't make Matt mad now.
Yeah.
Go on. You got to be careful. Hey, we have Rich Eisen coming up in just a few minutes. This half hour brought to you by Sunbury Motor, brought to you by Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. What a great job Corey does here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
Sunbury Motors Ford is turning up the heat with the hottest deals of the summer at the North 4th Street Auto Plaza in Sunbury. Get behind the wheel of a brand new 2025 Ford Escape. Over $6,800 off on select models. That's right, starting at just $24,975. Wow. A brand new SUV for under $25,000. Or take the road in a brand new Ford Explorer, now at the lowest price of the year, only $37,795. And check this out, they've got 26 Ford F-150s, America's best-selling truck, with savings close to $13,000. Yours from just $48,569. Want even more? How about 0% APR for 48 months on most models? These deals won't last. Head to Sunbury Motors Ford on North 4th Street in Sunbury. Or visit sunburymotors.com before they're gone.
Roku Sports Channel from noon to 3 Eastern. Miss the show? We've got a podcast so you can listen anytime. But here's the best part. Our YouTube channel. Subscribe at youtube.com/Rich Eisen Show and you'll never miss a moment.